Uniform Show, episode 23, The Career of Michael Jordan. For episode 12, we did the career of Tom Brady. But when you think of number 23, there's no question, it is Michael Jordan. There are great players in today's NBA. Nikola Jokic just recorded the first 30-20-20 game in NBA history. LeBron James is still playing at a great high level, a top 10 player in the league at age 40. Yet Michael Jordan is still the most popular basketball player among basketball fans, NBA fans today. He has not played for over 20 years. He has been retired from the league for over 20 years. Kobe Bryant, as popular as he was, never reached the heights of Michael Jordan. And there are a lot of reasons for that. He was the ultimate winner. He never lost an NBA Finals. He was a dominator. He had a killer instinct. He was on that court to win, to defeat you, to take you down. There wasn't that buddy-buddy mentality out there on the court. It wasn't all the hugging and the friendliness and the lightheartedness on the court. He was out there to destroy you. And you didn't have players teaming up. I mean, can you imagine Michael Jordan teaming up with Patrick Ewing or recruiting Reggie Miller to come play for the Bulls? Unbelievable. Jordan was a champion. He was one of the greatest competitors in professional team sports ever. And when we're thinking about the uniform, since this is the uniform show, there's no one that made the NBA more cool than Michael Jordan. Between the way he wore his jersey, the shoes, the accessories, Michael Jordan changed the way the game was played, that you didn't have to be a big man to be the best player in the game, but he also changed the look of the game and the style of the sport. Usually we have startup or intro music on this show. The only appropriate music for this episode would have been Sirius by the Alan Parsons Project. For obvious reasons, we can't include it. But let's get into this. The early days of Jordan on the Bulls, where you had the Chicago on the road uniform. And you have to go back some and think about how things have changed in the NBA. For most of my life, the home uniform was white. Across the entire league, the road uniform was color. Well, almost everything's been thrown out the window. There really aren't set rules. You wear how many jerseys a year? You would have your home, your road uniform, and perhaps an alternate uniform. And it's gotten way out of hand in the NBA. But the thing is, when you look at all the uniforms that Jordan wore for the Bulls, there's not one bad uniform. And anytime I'd see the throwback pictures of Jordan early in his career, I'd say, oh, wow, they had Chicago on the uniform. Because by the time it was the 90s, when I began watching the NBA, it was Bulls on home and road. But the Bulls have the best red uniform, the best red jersey in the sport. That's what I always say when you're evaluating team jerseys, who has the best of each of the primary colors. the Bulls red, blue would be the Warriors, and yellow would be the Lakers. And then if you go to the color green, the Celtics. And earlier in the days of Jordan's career, you can see the shorts were short. And that wouldn't last long, but he had the wristband. He usually wore wristbands in his career. And there you can see the shoes that everyone has to have. I mean, is there a more popular shoe than the Jordan 1s, the Air Jordan 1s? In Michael Jordan's shoes, he had the custom shoes. He didn't just have shoes like anyone else. And can I point out this about the shoes, and we'll talk more about the shoes. They were the team color. Red, white, black. These were better times. And here's a picture from the 1988 Slam Dunk Contest. One of the highlights of Jordan's career, he was competing with Dominique Wilkins at the All-Star Game in the dunk contest. And there he is, taking flight, dunking the ball in air. That's why he's Air Jordan. A career of many high highs and just a standout career, a career that we're still talking about. How many people are still talking about these great moments that took place over 30 years ago? We just don't do that very much. There's very little conversation, unless you're a MLB historian, you don't talk about these things, but certainly not at this length like you do about Jordan. We do around the time of the Super Bowl, we go back and think of great memories of past champions and some of the all-time greats and their great performances. But there are so many with Jordan, whether it be regular season performances, all-star games, NBA finals. Because this was before he went to a finals, won a finals, and you can't look much better than this. Then in 1990, this was quite a day in uniform sports history. The Bulls were on the road, and they were facing the Orlando Magic. And Michael Jordan's jersey was stolen out of the locker room. The Bulls did not have a backup jersey for Jordan. So he ended up having to wear number 12. This is what they were able to put together for him. But as you can see, no last name on the back of the jersey. And he's not wearing his number 23. He's wearing number 12. And what I was reading about this was, apparently, what happened, and I don't know how well this can be verified or substantiated here, but one of the stories of what happened was a member of arena security went through the ceiling and stole Jordan's jersey before the game, before they were in the locker room. That's what happened. He wore number 12, but the thing is, he dominated. Anyway, he scored over 40 points. It didn't matter. Jordan dominated, whether he was 23, whether he was 12, and his number would change again after his first retirement. And the reason I even knew this happened because, we didn't have highlights of every single game. You couldn't just go into YouTube and check, highlights for every single individual game. I had one of the best gifts I was ever given at Christmas was, and I really appreciate this was one of the best gifts I was ever given at Christmas. And it was a book that had all the best players by their number. And it went 0 to 99. So what they did was they selected one player to represent each number, like a key player, the best player who wore that number. And then they would show a few other greats who wore the number. And for certain numbers, they would show a player maybe later in their career. They would show something unusual that happened. Someone wearing this number at the end of their career, or something you may have forgotten, or something you just wouldn't have known. Well, when I came to number 12, I'm like, Michael Jordan wore number 12? Wow, I never knew that. I never would have imagined that. And then they gave some of the story about that, and that's how I knew about it. Because again, everyone didn't have access to SportsCenter, and NBA TV didn't exist back then. You didn't have all the highlights. You didn't have Bleacher Report. You didn't have all the social media. It was a different world. So Jordan wore 12. And when you think of sports, usually who are the great number 12s? You think of quarterbacks wearing number 12. Joe Namath, Aaron Rodgers, Roger Staubach. But the greatest number 12 is Michael Jordan, even if it was just for one day. I'm going to go through all of Jordan's NBA Finals, the 6 NBA Finals he played in, because this was a great time for uniforms, and these were some of the greatest uniform matchups you ever had in the NBA Finals. 1991, Lakers and Bulls. I mean, talk about, this is just a uniform fantasy for the finals that came true. Right there. Magic Johnson with the ball and Michael Jordan with the stare. I mean, talk about just being locked on your opponent. And right there, you would say in history, the 2 greatest non-centers ever. I mean, until Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Michael Jordan came around, really the greatest of the greats were all big men. Few exceptions. You think of Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Kareem, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan. And you look at those 2 uniforms right up against each other. I mean, those 2 primary colors there, the yellow, the red, the best of the best uniform styles, the round necks. What great designs. One thing I have to point out that I've never got to say on a show, though, Magic Johnson. I've never understood this about the Lakers at that point in history. What was with the blue knee pad guards? They couldn't make purple for them? Blue? Okay. Just from a design and color coordinating standpoint, I'm like, what was up with that? They really couldn't get them something in yellow or purple, or even white would have been better than the color blue for the Lakers. And here's another great one of Jordan and Magic, or Jordan and Johnson. Lakers, Bulls, Bulls, Lakers. I went back. It was a treat to just watch these NBA Finals. The Lakers were at the end of their run. This was the last finals that Magic Johnson was in, and this was Jordan's first finals, and it really was a passing of the torch. It was extremely significant finals in NBA history. And this was in Los Angeles. We say the Lakers would wear yellow and the Bulls would wear red. And then when the series went back to Chicago, I mean, that was a picture taken off Sports Illustrated. I mean, want to talk about times changing? Sports Illustrated was huge because you didn't have the internet. You didn't have access to all this media and pictures from the games. So what did you have? You had Sports Illustrated. You had to get Sports Illustrated if you want to see the good pictures, especially of playoffs, Super Bowls, World Series, NBA All-Star games, finals. You had the Lakers wearing purple and the Bulls wearing white. And that's Jordan going up over Divac. Yeah, Vlade was in. And you know what was really interesting was Jordan at times in that finals actually defensively plays center for the Bulls. Yeah, if you haven't watched that series, go online and watch it. Jordan was... You got to see those first three finals. You know, if you're a basketball fan, go on YouTube and watch those first three finals. That was Jordan at his absolute peak. Crazy on offense, defense, just his complete game on offense, on defense. That was prime Jordan. That was Jordan at his absolute peak. Those first three finals. And then the second NBA Finals was against the Trailblazers. To me, one of the most underrated uniforms in the NBA was, and they're still very good today, not quite as good as they used to be, but the Trailblazers had great uniforms. And Clyde Drexler was one of the greatest shooting guards in history. Unfortunately for him, he was playing the same time as Jordan. He just ran into some buzzsaws in the NBA Finals because when he was coming up, he had to go through Magic Johnson's Lakers and then, and you have to face Jordan in the finals. Congratulations. And then, of course, the shrug. The Game 1 performance of Michael Jordan in the 1992 NBA Finals. That first half was one of the greatest halves in NBA history because of all the expectations and being a Game 1 on the greatest stage and his three-point shooting at a time when three-point shooting isn't what it is today. And he generally wasn't considered a good three-point shooter. He didn't shoot a lot of threes. But you know what would have been scary is Jordan in the modern game shooting threes and considering his work ethic to be the best. I think Jordan would have been, even if he was just an average three-point shooter, he would average 40 points a game. He would. Probably over 40 points a game. I mean, you think about his career with very little three-point shooting, he averaged 30 points a game. He had a season where he averaged 37 points a game. Yeah, offensively, Jordan would be even better now. But he had it all offensively. The greatest scorer there ever was. In his time, it was about the mid-range game, and he could finish at the basket. Pretty good distributor and a good rebounder for his size. And then when the game went to Portland, still great uniforms. I mean, how clean is that Bulls uniform? And I know I'm not the only one that misses the NBA and NBC. I mean, ESPN does an okay, ESPN, ABC, they do an okay job. You know, the best thing they have going for them is Mike Breen. I think other than Mike Breen, everything is pretty average. Everything either is average or below average with the NBA broadcast. But that's another reason why Jordan's career is so great and memorable, because it was at the time of the NBA on NBC. And you had the big calls by either Marv Albert or in the 1998 finals, Bob Costas. I love Bob Costas. And that was another thing that was actually really interesting when you look back at that finals of the Bulls and Blazers. I mean, the Bulls obviously have the better uniform, but the Blazers are very solid. And it worked even though they shared all the same colors. Because each team had red, white, and black. Then 1992, since there's so many parts of Jordan's career, it's hard to keep everything in chronological order. But in 1992, you had the Dream Team. The Dream Team. And I really liked these uniforms. I have to say, I've never loved any of the different Dream Team uniforms, but they've gotten worse over the years. And these have more color. They actually have the red, white, and blue. The ones from this past summer were really drab and boring. And these are much better than what we've had most recently. And the players were forced to wear lower numbers. So in this case, Michael Jordan wore number 9. And there's the other version, the white version of the Dream Team uniform. And of course, they won the gold. There's Jordan with Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson would normally be number 32. He was wearing number 15. And many still agree that was the greatest team ever assembled, because you had Jordan, Magic, and Larry Bird. Not to mention, you had Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, John Stockton, Karl Malone, prime David Robinson, Patrick Ewing. What a sharp uniform. That's a great use of the red, white, and blue. And why can't they just wear something similar? I mean, I hate so many times uniforms. It's like we got to change things up so much. If you have something that works, go with it. Or can we just make minor tweaks to it? They'd be smart to return to these. And then the 1993 finals. Wow. Chicago. There you have Jordan and Barkley. The Bulls home. So solid. And one of my all-time favorite uniforms across all sports is the 1990s Suns uniforms. And talk about uniforms that pop and are spectacular. One of the criticisms of the 90s uniforms was they're too loud. They're just way too loud. There's too much going on. They're too busy. I'll give you that in some cases, but not when it comes to the Suns. Why did the Suns not go back? I'm going to complain about it at least one more time today. Why did the Suns not just go back to these uniforms? They came up with one that is really heavy on the colors white and purple, not so much the orange. This is the best version the Suns had. This is just one of the best uniforms in NBA history. And you just see, again, the contrast. Such a great use of colors. The Bulls are what they are, the perfect white and red uniform. And then the Suns have really make it work because those are the colors you would think of for Phoenix. Really good contrast without being primary colors. These are secondary colors, orange and purple, but they contrast really nicely. It's like yellow and blue, purple and orange. And this is what it looked like in Phoenix. Also great. Not as strong, because that's actually one of the things that I understand about them. If they want to make this change around the whole league, was there's no question that the road uniform in both cases, because of it's full of color, it's the primary team color, the road uniform was the better, superior uniform. I always thought that was strange in the NBA, but you just knew that's how it was. It was the white uniform. It's like Major League Baseball, of course, would have the white uniform. The NFL, the white uniform would be the road. So it's a little different in the three major sports historically. It would be NFL, color at home, which is better. Road is white. MLB is white at home, gray on the road, and the NBA was white at home and color on the road. That's the way it was. MLB, white home, gray road. NFL, color at home, road white. NBA, home white, road color. MLB is really in their own category with that. They're different. But I think the NFL always made more sense than what I saw growing up with the NBA. But then Jordan retired. He three-peated. He was at the top of the NBA world, the greatest player in the sport, already an all-time great, and then he retired. And in a move that shocked and stunned everyone, he decided he was going to play baseball. Michael Jordan left the NBA to pursue a career in Major League Baseball. And he signed with the White Sox, not the Cubs, because the same owner that owned the Bulls also owned the White Sox. He wore the uniform as good as anyone in the NBA. And he made a great looking baseball player here. And the White Sox, I love the White Sox uniform. I'm glad they've kept it all these years. The pinstripes. He also had the wristbands carried over, which is always a solid look. You know who Mr. Wristband is in baseball. It's Dusty Baker. But you can never go wrong with a uniform that's white and black. It's not going to be the most spectacular, but there he is, in white and black, in the baseball uniform for the White Sox. Michael Jordan no longer in the NBA, now playing baseball. And here he is. This must have been some media event. Think about this. This was 1994. Michael Jordan and Barry Bonds. Want to talk about an interesting crossover? Bonds and Jordan. And he's wearing an upper deck hat. I mean, nice shades. I mean, Michael Jordan knew style. He knew how to look good. He's wearing an upper deck hat, and I can see there's a Blue Jays player in the background also. And Bonds had the orange wristbands. This was the 90s. I just loved the 90s. Two of the all-time greats there from different worlds. Barry Bonds, who course, had a father who played the game in Bobby Bonds. And then you have Michael Jordan, who recently retired as the greatest basketball player of his time and one of the all-time greats. While Michael Jordan never played in an official regular season Major League Baseball game, he did make it up for an exhibition game before the season in 1994 between the White Sox and the Cubs, and he got to play at Wrigley Field. Now that is one of the most unique, coolest pictures you will ever see in one of our shows. Michael Jordan at bat, Wrigley Field, with the brick backstop behind him. I mean, that is iconic Wrigley Field. And there you have arguably the greatest basketball player of all time at bat at one of the most historic baseball parks ever. At least a National League park, Wrigley, Fenway, take your pick. And he even got 2 hits in this game, and there he is at second base. You can even see the outfield and what it looks like the ivy's dead out there at that point. It was in early April when he played that one exhibition game in the black White Sox alternate uniform, which is a great alternate uniform. And he wore 45. That was his number. It was the number he wore when he played baseball in high school. Number 45, Jordan, White Sox, Wrigley Field. I never knew he actually played a game in Chicago. I mean, if it's an exhibition game, and sure, he's Michael Jordan, they were going to try and do everything they could to get him up to play. Even if it was an exhibition game, that's an accomplishment. Oh, he didn't make it to the majors at any point in the regular season 94. He ended up playing Double-A baseball with the Birmingham Barons, who was an affiliate of the Chicago White Sox. And one of the things you have to say about baseball is, I mean, I have great respect for the skill level in the other major professional sport, whether that be the NFL or the NBA. But baseball is different. You need talent, you need skill, you need natural ability in any of these sports. And in the NFL, you need to be big, you need to be strong, you need to be fast. And it can involve more training, more lifting. And you need to be big, face it. And in the NBA, obviously, you need to be tall to play. I mean, very few players can be around 6 feet and get it done. In baseball, it's not a matter of being tall. It's not a matter of being strong as much. It has more to do with those God-given talents and abilities, the incredible hand-eye coordination. And if you're a positional, I mean, you have to have that. If you're a pitcher, that is so true. If you're a everyday player, you need to be able to hit a baseball and then play the field unless you're a designated hitter. Baseball was my favorite sport growing up, and that was the one I wanted to succeed in. And you know, honestly, of the 3 sports, it was the worst of the 3 for me. I couldn't play football because I just simply wasn't big enough. Basketball, I wasn't tall enough. I was quite good at both of them. Baseball's the one I really wanted, and it's the one I struggled the most with, hitting a baseball. But all in all, he played okay at Double-A But he didn't get promoted because he didn't deserve to get promoted. And I applaud the White Sox for not just bringing up for all the media attention and just to get the whole sports world to look at them. I mean, to a certain extent they did when they agreed to sign Michael Jordan to play baseball. But he didn't belong. But he gave it a good shot. And he was in the minors for 1994. And also the Barons, they have the same colors as the White Sox. And he looks great in the uniform with the shades, the wristbands. I mean, Michael Jordan always knew how to look good. That's the point. But it was one season in the minor leagues. In 1994, he played minor league baseball. Also in 1994, there was the strike. And then 95, he decided before the season he would no longer play baseball. He would no longer attempt to play baseball. And he returned to the NBA. And all he said was, and all he needed to say was, I'm back. He returned to the Chicago Bulls, and he wore number 45. He did not return with number 23. And the fascinating thing about that was the Bulls in 1994 retired his number 23. That was fast. It was Michael Jordan. There you see him pictured in the NBA again, back with the Bulls, number 45. But the return did not go as planned. Even for Michael Jordan, it wasn't easy to get back and to return to form after being out of the game for almost 2 seasons, as the Bulls would fall short in the playoffs and were eliminated by the Orlando Magic. Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway. They had a pretty good team there in Orlando. Horace Grant. And after the season was over, they filmed Space Jam. You may love it, you may hate it, but Space Jam was a big-time movie. Michael Jordan joining forces with Bugs Bunny and the Looney Tunes that, well, at least many of us even grew up with. And he was on the Toon Squad, and you can see the Toon Squad uniform there. Not bad, actually. The movie hasn't held up well at all. I mean, I went back and watched it a few years ago, but it is worth watching. Again, if you saw it once as a child, go back and at least watch it one more time. It has its moments. I'm not defending it in any way, but it has its moments. And they brought on an interesting cast of players. Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Larry Johnson, Muggsy Bogues, and then Sean Bradley. I mean, you want to talk about a height disparity? I mean, Muggsy was 5'3", and Sean Bradley was 7'6". And then there also was Larry Bird was in the movie as well. Bill Murray and Wayne Knight brought in the comedy. It was a one-of-a-kind movie. I never saw the movie that LeBron James made called Space Jam 2. I never saw it. But you can appreciate Space Jam if you grew up in the 90s. In the 96 season, though, after having the off season, the Bulls would come back and they would have something to prove. They would set the single season record with 72 regular season wins and they would face the Seattle Supersonics in the finals. That's the most memorable picture from that series. Michael Jordan and Gary Payton. So I think it's true to say that was his weakest finals of all 6 finals. And Payton did a terrific job defending Jordan. But the Bulls won. That would be their 4th championship. And I miss the Sonics. The Sonics were so much better than the Thunder. Seattle should have a basketball team. This was much better than anything the Thunder have produced. I mean, the Thunder have very boring uniforms. The Sonics really brought something different to the NBA. And it's a shame that Seattle doesn't have the Sonics any longer. They always had solid to good uniforms, unlike the Thunder. Here's another picture from those finals, and this is just what you had from Jordan. Someone who wasn't content. He still felt like he had something to prove when he came back to the NBA. He won 3 straight, but the question was, could he still do it? That says it all. That's the difference between Jordan and the modern athletes. He's already won 3. He's not satisfied. You could say pissed off for greatness. That's what Ray Lewis said. Pissed off for greatness. I appreciate that as a fan. Then the 97 finals. Bulls, Jazz. And then in 97 and 98, you had the repeat matchup, Bulls and Jazz, and same result. Bulls win both times. Bulls have 2 three-peats. So Jordan proved he could still do it while being in his mid-30s, even after leaving the game, leaving the sport for almost 2 full seasons. Once he got an off season, he could train again. He won 3 more finals. He had a first three-peat and a second three-peat. And the Jazz, I love these Jazz uniforms. Again, some people would say, again, too busy, too much on the uniform. The Mountains are beautiful uniforms. And those are 2 of the greats, Jordan and Karl Malone. Karl Malone didn't get it done. I have a feeling he would have won one of those finals if he wasn't up against Michael Jordan. One of the greatest scorers of all time, top 5 power forward of all time. The position's really taken off since then, when you've had Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett, Giannis. And sadly for the Jazz, they made it to the finals twice. They lost twice. And this is one of the greatest moments in sports history. Was Jordan's Game 6 performance in the 1998 finals. We could debate whether he pushed off or not to get that open shot, but it was really fitting in so many ways that he had that open shot on his own, standing alone, and he buries the jump shot, and he secures the 6th and final NBA Finals championship for the Chicago Bulls, completing the second three-peat. And it was a great call by Bob Costas. There was no Marv Albert, and he got the call. And it was just an incredible sequence at the end of the game. Jordan drives in, he scores 2. Then he steals the ball from Karl Malone, gets it back, and then he gets this final shot to seal the deal. 6 finals. 6 finals championships, 6 finals MVPs for Jordan. It is, though, one of the great what-ifs in sports history is if he did not retire, how many would he have won? Would the Bulls have won 8 straight finals? They would have at least got to 8 straight. We'll never know. It's one of the great debates because they would have gone up against the Rockets. And the Rockets played really well and gave the Bulls trouble because of one man, Hakeem. Hakeem, when you put together his offense and his defense, he gave the Bulls trouble. It would have been great to see. If the teams just stayed pretty much as they were, and you just plugged Jordan in 94 on the 94 Bulls and the 95 Bulls, if I had to take a stab at it, I think the Bulls would have won 4 straight finals. The question is about that 95 because they would have won the first time against the Rockets. The second time, I don't know. The Rockets acquired Clyde Drexler to go along with Hakeem Olajuwon. Without without Horace Grant or Dennis Rodman, that would have been very difficult even for the Bulls. But again, we would be dealing with Michael Jordan in the finals. And here's a great statistic. Again, Jordan is the all-time regular season leader in points per game. Right? He's number 1 in NBA history, but he's also number 1 in playoff history. You have 33 points a game in the playoffs. Crazy. 33 points a game for his career. That was the perfect ending of a career for Michael Jordan. You retire on the mountaintop again, still proving you're the best. You weren't defeated. You three-peat for a second time. And everyone agreed at that time, the greatest basketball player ever, Michael Jordan. And there's very few in the 3 major sports that I can come up with who had that perfect retirement, still finishing on top. The NBA, Michael Jordan. The NFL, I'd say John Elway. John Elway winning back-to-back Super Bowls to finish his career, and it wasn't just like he was hobbling along. It wasn't just hobbling along. It wasn't like Peyton Manning at the end of his career winning and he's leaking oil. No, Elway could still really bomb him. Yeah, he had Terrell Davis, but he could really still throw and make the big plays, and he finished with a Super Bowl MVP. And he stayed retired. Tony La Russa as a manager with the Cardinals. What a career La Russa had. With the A's, the Oakland A's, he got to 3 straight World Series. He only won 1. It was the one in the middle. He lost in 88, won in 89, lost in 90. But then he returns to the World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals. He loses in 2004 to the Red Sox. He wins in 2006 against the Tigers, and then he wins in 2011 in 7 games against the Rangers. He went 1-2 with the A's, 2-1 with the Cardinals, wins a 7-game series in the World Series, and then he retires. But then he came back again. Jordan was retired for now. I want to look at some of the alternate uniforms here. So the Bulls had a couple different black uniforms. They had the striped version here, which was the first version, the black with the red pinstripes, and then also the solid black. My favorite's the solid black, but they're both strong alternate uniforms. I really like them both. Clean, I mean, it doesn't change anything as far as the font, the numbers, they're all consistent. It's just a colored version of the regular uniform. And I wish that they would do that in basketball and baseball. Just give us a colored alternate version of the regular uniforms. Don't go crazy. This is a winner. And a couple teams did this in the NBA, but the Bulls, and now everyone has to do black, right? Everyone has to have a black jersey in the NBA, but this was very unique at this time in the 90s. All-Star games. Here's a very early All-Star game that Jordan played in, and you can see Kareem. And the NBA kept this. That might even be Jordan's first All-Star game. This was, as you can see, a very young Michael Jordan, and he's representing the East. And then on the other side, there's Kareem, a old, up there in age, end of career Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. These are solid uniforms on both sides. No complaints. And then you can see that same design remained there. And this was a few years later where Michael Jordan won the All-Star Game MVP. Then with his return in 1996, you had something very different here. Some people like him, others don't. I don't like him. The 96 All-Star Game. But here's my personal favorite from the All-Star Games. These were the first two All-Star games I watched, was 97 and 98, where the players wore their actual uniforms on the court, their team uniforms, and I loved it. I thought that's what they always did. And they didn't. It would just happen to be they were doing this for a short period over a couple years when I began watching, and I love it. I mean, this is the All-Star Game. Does it get any better than this? So what you see is the East here wore the white home uniform, and then the West wore their road uniforms, and it worked great. And just in this one picture here, you have all the great jerseys here. You have the Bulls, you have the Celtics, you have the Lakers, my all-time favorite Suns, and then there's Tim Duncan in the Spurs before they went to more of the V-neck look. And we didn't get to see much of Michael Jordan versus Tim Duncan. And that's why you appreciate the All-Star games, and you got to see the real uniforms. Man. I mean, there's the whole Eastern Conference team in 98. Which ones do I like? I've already said what I need to on the Bulls with Jordan and Pippen. I loved the Pistons. You see Grant Hill in the front. I really thought the Heat should have kept that look as well. I've never been a fan of the current Heat uniforms they've had now for so many years. The Knicks, of course, are winners. Really like the Bucks. I admit the Hawks, very colorful, but that is really big hawk on the uniform. The Bullets. Yeah, what can you say? The Bullets. Chris Webber. And then Glenn Rice also in the back with the Hornets. Solid Hornets uniform. Like the Magic. Penny back there. Much better than what they have today. Cavs, not a fan of those particular Cavs uniforms. Those are weak Cavs uniforms. But overall, a good group of uniforms there. We'll have to look at the All-Star games, just do an All-Star game episode sometime. Okay, so after Jordan retires, I was watching the Giants and Cubs wild card 1-game playoff in '98. It was a painful game as a Giants fan. Really terrible game. Great day if you're a Cubs fan. Michael Jordan threw out the first pitch, and he's wearing the Cubs hat and the Cubs uniform out there. He threw out the first pitch with Sammy Sosa. You know it's 1998, because 1998, of course, was the home run chase between McGwire and Sosa. You know, it just seems so strange seeing him in the Cubs after he played for the Birmingham Barons, and he was in the White Sox organization. But Chicago, you know, they love, I don't care if you're a Cubs fan or White Sox fan, you love Jordan. Not a split town north and south for basketball. So he threw out the first pitch, and I loved it. I loved seeing it. But Michael Jordan got an itch to play again, and he returned and came out of retirement a second time and played for, not the Chicago Bulls, the Washington Wizards. And it was never right. And to be honest, I never understood the decision. He had loving the game, okay, but he had nothing else to prove. He's in his late 30s. This is not a good team. I never agreed with the decision, never liked the decision. His career was the perfect ending. And we were talking earlier about those who left on top and stayed retired. John Elway did. Tony La Russa did not. He returned to the majors with the White Sox. It was a disaster. I would not call Michael Jordan's return to the NBA. It was not an embarrassment. It was not a disaster. Everyone was glad he was back, but he was not the same. Physically was not the same player as he was in 1998. In 2001, he just was not the same player 3 years later as he was in 1998. It wasn't right. It didn't look right. And the Wizards have always had bad uniforms. He never had a bad uniform with the Bulls, never had a good uniform with the Wizards. The Wizards didn't even make it to the playoffs either year. So was it cool on some level? Was it great to see Jordan back in the game on some level? Yeah, especially in the All-Star games. But as far as success goes, it was a failure. Did it hurt his legacy at all? Clearly not. No one thinks any less of Michael Jordan for returning to the game. Everyone still agrees the greatest competitor in NBA history, and every time he was in a championship, he won. And there's another one in the All-Star game where he's with Kobe Bryant, and they returned actually to those early All-Star game uniforms that he wore at the beginning of his career. So at that time, they'd abandoned the team uniforms. I wasn't happy about. He did get to play in a turnback Bullets uniform, though. And I wasn't sure this was actually real. I wondered if this was actually photoshopped. The Upper Deck card to prove it, that's the real deal. Michael Jordan wearing the Bullets uniform. I love turnback uniforms. I don't like this one. And we can't end this episode, number 23, the Michael Jordan tribute episode, without talking about the shoes. And here's everyone's favorite shoe, and the shoe of choice that you will see. You see them everywhere. I mean, I start seeing these come up when Nick Bosa was wearing these for the 49ers, and it was kind of cool that he was wearing Jordans with the 49ers because the 49ers, very much the same color scheme, being red being their primary color. And you see different styles. This is more the the high top version, but you can also see the low cut version. Watch an NBA game. It's like the whole Lakers staff these days, including the head coach, is wearing the low cut version of the Jordan 1s. If anything, they're growing in popularity. And to be honest, they're a great looking shoe. No one's arguing that or denying that. But there can be too much of one shoe. And it also cracks me up when you see all the kids wearing them, and it's like, you never watched Jordan. At least I got to see the end of his career at the Bulls, and then we saw him return at the Wizards. These people never saw him with the Bulls, and most of them didn't even see him when he returned with the Wizards. Yet they're wearing the shoe because, well, they like the shoe, and it's just like so many shoes, or when you're in school, you got to have them, and if you don't, you're on the outside. But here's some of the other shoes that he wore. And these are the ones that he wore when he came back. This was these are the shoes at the end of his career with the Bulls. The ones I actually like the most here of these three are the ones in the center. The primary black, those are sweet. But here's what I want to say about these. It's the team color. What a career, what a champion. And who wore the uniform better? With the shoes, with the wristbands. Everything's color coordinated. And this is so much of the reason why I have the tastes that I do. This is the expectation when you watch sports. Here's the thing. You can look great. You can be an individual, and you can choose to wear the shoes you want. You can have wristbands. You can do that. You can have your accessories, but you're not bigger than the team, right? It still is consistent, and it goes along with the color scheme of the team. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was a great career to watch. It was a pleasure to watch his talent. It was a pleasure to watch him wear the uniform and suit up like he did. And there'll never be another Michael Jordan.